Thank you for joining us today. My name is Liz Moya. I will be your host for today's webinar. And our session for today is Workplace Wellness, a proactive approach to supporting productivity and performance. Our presenter for today is Elena Madrid, and I am your host. I am accompanied by Dr. Olga Escamilla and Dr. Deb Hartgrove. So we have a really great team with us today. So let's go ahead and get started. Once again, we are here for Workplace Wellness, a proactive approach to supporting productivity and performance with Elena Madrid. And let me tell you a little bit about our guest speaker for today. Elena Madrid has served in the field of education for over 17 years with combined experience as an assistant director for student leadership and campus life at El Paso Community College. She's also served as a recruiter for the El Paso Community College, a literacy coordinator for Isleta del Sur Pueblo in El Paso, Texas, and she currently serves as a program specialist with the Department of Adult Education and Literacy at the Texas Workforce Commission in Austin, Texas. She contributed to the development and facilitation of the first annual El Paso Community College Student Leadership Conference and regularly takes the opportunity to speak to groups on the topics of empowerment, education, and success strategies. She further gives back to the community as a board member for the nonprofit Awaken Inner Fire, which shares a mediation practice to promote wellness and life balance. Ms. Madrid holds a bachelor's degree in journalism from New Mexico State University and a master's degree in leadership studies from the University of Texas at El Paso. Her experience as a first-generation college student drives her to make technology, information, and resources more accessible to others so that they can increase their opportunity for success. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Ms. Elena Madrid.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody. So most of you already know me. I've worked with you or spoken with you many, many times in the field. But just quickly, I'm really interested. I see a lot of new people in the chat that I've never met personally. And I'd be interested in knowing how you heard about this presentation, if it was through the PD portal or if someone recommended it to you, maybe it was your director or something like that. If you could put it in the chat and also just mention what you are hoping to get out of this presentation, that would be good. So I see director recommended it, Dr. Escamilla recommended to Kelly Meek. So that would be kind of great because a lot of times we present, the presenters put stuff together and we're never really sure how it gets out there to people. So it's kind of nice to get that feedback. Okay, so great. And thank you for joining me today. I hope this will be a beneficial presentation for you. Also that you learn a couple of things that will be useful to you, then maybe you'll be able to implement for yourself in creating wellness in your life and also in your work environment. So the reason why I created this initially was I planned on presenting it at the Workforce Forum, but as you know, COVID hit and they canceled the whole forum. So I worked really long and hard on this. And as a matter of fact, I was working with Dr. Purdue on this. She was going to be in contribution. But for the sake of today's presentation, we had to cut it down to an hour. And plus I modified it. So now it's going to have more of a focus on the individual as opposed to the actual work environment and what directors or administrators might be doing for their staff. So this is going to be for anybody that's an employee, you know, whether you're a teacher, you're an administrator, you're a facilitator, you're a coordinator. So anyone can benefit from this presentation. Okay. So things to be covered today or learning objectives is one, understanding how wellness plays a role in productivity, performance, and employee output. So as you know, every day at work, we're expected to meet, you know, certain performance or, you know, we have certain job duties or we're looking to accomplish something for our team, for our work environment. And we look at productivity and performance, but we don't always look at, okay, what do we need to achieve that? So we know what we need in terms of work, maybe work ethic or kind of like workability. But I think a lot of times we don't look at ourselves and see how we are performing, how we're feeling what our wellness is and how that contributes to productivity also. So we're going to be looking at a couple of those things. The second thing is recognize the benefits of productivity rather than reactive behavior when it comes to health and wellness. So we're going to touch upon how generally when we really start to look at health and wellness is when we're already showing signs that maybe something is not going right within our bodies. Sometimes we may have something that shows up, whether it be a disease or maybe some kind of stress or anxiety. You know, those are all kind of side effects of things that led up to that. So when it's at that point, you've already probably experienced a bunch of different things, and then your body is kind of, you know, telling you, hey, things aren't in balance. Like you need to step back and kind of analyze and, you know, assess what's going on. And the third thing is learn some ways to cultivate wellness in your life and workplace. So questions you may or should be asking yourself every day is, what potential am I bringing to work today? And am I functioning at my highest level? So I think a lot of times we try to put our best face forward, and to many people, it looks like we're always at 100%, but they don't always see the stuff that's going on, you know, behind the curtain, behind the door. They don't understand maybe some of the things that we're struggling with personally or, you know, health-wise, because we have this idea that we have to always show up. And it's true, we should be showing up, but at what level are we showing up? Are we truly at our very best? Because again, you know, what's showing on the outside may not necessarily what's going on in the inside. So I want you all to look at this list of things and think about if you've ever experienced any of these things. So things like anxiety, stress, autoimmune issues, brain fog, chronic pain, fatigue, poor concentration, weight gain, depression, burnout. You've probably experienced at least one of these things while having been an employee, while having participated in the workforce. Hopefully you haven't experienced all of these things. That's kind of a lot to experience. Okay, so the questions again, you know, what potential am I bringing to work today? And am I functioning at my highest level? So again, these are the list of the things that I mentioned. So just think about, have you experienced any of these things? Maybe you've experienced multiple of these things and they've been, or maybe you're experiencing them now, right? I can definitely say that at times I do feel stress. At times I do have some anxiety. I may feel a bit fatigued. Definitely poor concentration. And I know where that's coming from. And I'll explain that a little bit later. But what I'd like to do is, we do have a mentee where we would like for you to share with us, what have you been experiencing? It may be some of the things on the list, and if it is, that's okay. Share those things, the different things that people have been experiencing. Back pain, okay. Headaches, burnout, all about autoimmune, okay. Migraines, poor concentration, lots of burnout, stress, yes, weight gain, right here, depression, hard to sleep, tension, anything else, weight gain. So I'm told the bigger the word is, the more people are saying the same thing. So weight gain's a pretty big one. Fatigue, disappointment, okay. Pandemic pounds, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one before. Frustration, demotivation, big on the weight gain. Tension, overload, angst, some great words. Okay, so you can see here that, you know, there's a lot going on with people participating today. And I think what we can all agree on is we're not in this alone. Many of us are experiencing some of the same things. Obviously, weight gain, the big one for most people. But just seeing the word show up and realizing, you know, there's a lot going on with a lot of people right now. And many of these things could be affecting performance. They could be affecting, how you feel overall. And as we know, when we don't feel 100%, it's really hard for us to perform at 100%. So why is this important? Why would, someone from AEL want to talk about this and make this a main topic of conversation? Well, it's estimated as of 2018, there's about 155 million people employed in the United States, and I'm just one of them. So aside my title, aside my job description, I'm an employee, I'm a worker. I'm out there in the workforce, and I'm experiencing many of the same things that you are in terms of stress and things related to stress. So I thought, this is really, really important. The other thing is taking into consideration, aside from my own responsibilities, who am I responsible to, or who am I responsible for? So, I work with a team. I'm not the only person that works in my department. I work with a pretty small team, a pretty tight team, and we have a lot of responsibilities. But on top of that, I'm also a grandmother, and I recently, I moved in with my grandchildren, my daughter and her husband, and I am now responsible for my grandchildren financially. So, with her husband. The point is this: we all have a lot of responsibility. We have a lot of things on our shoulder. There's probably some people that even depend on us. If you're a single parent out there, most definitely, there are people dependent on you. And thinking about, if you can't perform at your very best, what does that mean in terms of job stability? What does that mean in terms of you being able to continue to do the things that you love for work, but still have work-life balance? And of course, show up the very best every day. So I want to talk a little bit about my team. I'm very, very happy to be a part of this amazing team because they're all very unique. This is our last Christmas picture that we took, and we modified it so we could send it out to people and send it around the department. So Anson was a part of our team, and that was him in the Santa suit, but he's no longer with us officially, and Kara is. And I wanted to include Kara. And if Kara, if you're on the call, I apologize. I couldn't find a picture of you, so I used a smiley face, but I wanted to include you. So we're 10 members, and we provide service to 36 grant recipients across the state of Texas. And that doesn't include special initiatives, which mainly fall on Anne. God bless her soul. She takes on a lot of responsibility. And she's a very hard worker. She's always working. And I have to wonder, how does she manage her stress? How does she balance everything day in and day out? We're also responsible for $73 million worth of funding. That's a lot of money, going out there and checking in with our programs and, the work that we do. Many people, even though we're not supposed to, sometimes work over 40 hours. And I know many of you in the field also do that. And it's not necessarily reported. It's just done because you feel like that's what needs to be done to get the job done, to do quality work, to ensure that our responsibilities are taken care of. But in exchange for that, we may be compromising our home life. We may be compromising our health. And this is what this presentation is really about and a focus on. So let's talk about the time that's really spent at work. So on average, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're looking at 8.5 hours. And I know that there's many people out there doing so much more than that, sometimes 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours a day. That's a lot of hours. So, just with those daily hours, we're looking at 42.5 hours a week. So that's roughly 25% of the 168 hours in a week. 25%, 1/4 of your week is spent working. And that's on the low, that's like on the minimum requirement. And again, most people are going over that minimum required. So just mentioning again that this does not include overtime or commuting time. Many of us before COVID started were commuting sometimes an hour or more just to get to work, and then another hour or more just to get home. So now that COVID has changed and we're not necessarily dealing with the commuting time, there are other issues that we deal with in terms of time management. So thinking about how have things been different for you now that there's not a clear line or distinction drawn between home and work. So asking yourself, how has COVID impacted productivity with the increased number of hours on the computer, no clear division between the workplace and home, and the ease to lose yourself while working? So that's the biggest thing that I've heard is that a lot of people say, I just lose track of time. Or, it's just so easy to be on the computer and sometimes I can't pull myself away from it. Or, people are always requesting meetings and just feeling like you need to be in every single meeting. So even though we may have been more productive in the sense of looking like we're spending more time towards work or it's easier to be in work, are we really being productive? Because just because we're there and we're showing up doesn't mean we're producing, right? So those are things to be thinking about. So let's talk about overwhelmed employees and what's contributing to people being overwhelmed. So we got a lot going on, right? We got emails, we got phone calls, we have meeting after meeting back to back. As a matter of fact, right at 1 o'clock, I have another presentation. So I'm in it and I'm experiencing it right now. And then we have messages. Like I think for work alone, we have everything for Teams and we have different communication, lines of communication with that because we have different projects going on. So let's say we have 10 different projects going on or different lines of communication. Then we have the texting, right? We have another method of communication that we use. We also have emails, and that's just for our small group. And then you add everything else on top of that. So you have everything for TWC, you have everything with the providers, you have everything with, Train PD as far as all the new webinars coming up. It could be like overstimulation. And that thing alone can shut you down because you just have too much information, you just have too much going on. And then you have this other thing. Some people maybe not have put a label to it yet, but some people refer to it as FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. So it's this thing like you get an invite to a meeting and you just feel obligated, like you need to attend. And then you have this other thing going on. So then you're having to decide and, you just can't get to everything. And then you create this cycle for yourself where you think you're busy all the time because you have all this going on. And the moment that you're not, you don't know how to settle down. You don't know how to just kind of decompress and do what you need to do to de-stress because you've kind of created a cycle for yourself where it's like you're just used to being so busy all the time until you get burnt out and you don't have a choice but not to do anything. So can work be making people sick? Well, according to Jeffrey Pfeiffer with Stanford University, the workplace is the single biggest source of stress in America. And Gallup research shows that 53% of workers are not engaged at work and 13% are actively disengaged, meaning that employees dislike their work so much they are undermining their employer in some way. So what does this mean? This means, think about any time you've been at work and be honest with yourself, because I'm sure this has happened to many people where either you're just like so overwhelmed, you don't know where to start. So your thinking is just not there, you're not clear, you can't take action because you're almost like a deer in the headlights. Everything's just coming at you one time, you kind of shut down. Or, you might already be in that mode of depression where it's just been so much for so long that you just can't get yourself to perform. But these are things that aren't normally talked about in the work environment because it's always this idea of like, I got to keep showing up at my very best because I don't want people to think that I'm not a good worker, right? So we have this idea of image and not addressing these very serious issues. In the UK and US, more than 60% of workers cite poor work-life balance, and almost 40% of American workers believe they cannot achieve career success without negatively impacting their family. Now, this is really, really serious, because when we talk about relationships and what it takes to have a successful relationship, I think most of us agree it would be time and investment. And if all your time and investment is going into work, more than likely your relationships will have an impact. So this is another thing to think about, because even though we're thinking, you know, I really gotta put all this time and effort into work, and yes, you do, but there needs to be balance so that we're not feeling like we have to sacrifice one thing over the other. So let's look at a little bit more into the statistics of the cost of health. So stress accounts for 37% of all work-related illnesses and 45% of sick days, according to Towers and Watson. And they're a consultation firm that goes in and does evaluations and helps company to perform better. According to the American Heart Association, heart disease and stroke cost $126 billion in lost productivity each year. Now that's very serious, because, you know, once you have a heart attack or a stroke, many times the individual isn't able to come back to perform at 100%. So we got to really be thinking about things differently so we don't keep pushing ourselves to that point, especially when it comes to the work environment and stress, and if there's something that we can do about it. $1 in $7 of healthcare is spent on diabetes, and also Alzheimer's alone costs U.S. businesses $61 billion per year. So you're saying, well, what does diabetes or, you know, Alzheimer's has to do with anything? Again, going back to stress, going back to not taking care of your health, going back to these things are showing up after things have gotten to a point where it's just basically a reflection of what's been going on internally, maybe for some time. So the bottom line is you can only give what you have. Eventually things may catch up to you. Now let's talk about being proactive and not reactive. So the impact of productivity and performance is very often only noticed when someone is out sick or has permanently left an organization. So think about every time you work in an organization and you've never really gotten to know anybody. You see them day to day. Maybe you kind of realize they might have some health issues, but you know, you never have a conversation with them. But you know, one day they just stop showing up to work. And that's when you realize, wow, you know, that person have a role to play in the team. You know, maybe that person wasn't some big contribution. Maybe they were the hoarder information. I don't know. I've been in that situation where sometimes information isn't always shared, and then that person leaves, and then you really feel it, because we're like, well, we don't even know what had been going on the whole time. So this is, you know, kind of the thing where we're not having the conversation about health. We're not ensuring that people are feeling well. What are they dealing with? What's on their plate? What is the workload? And these are the conversations we should be having. So productivity versus performance, when you think of the two, it's you know, I put it in pretty simple terms here, so it's understandable. Productivity is going to be more quantitative and tangible. It's stuff that you can kind of measure. It's the amount of work completed. It's worth in terms of organizational objectives. It's related to the number of hours worked or the money invested. And then performance is going to be more qualitative. It's going to be more intangible. It's going to be things like, you know, the type of communication that people have, the willingness to collaborate, the attitude that they have, things that you can't necessarily measure. You know, if it's good or bad, just, you know, kind of the way it's showing up. But as far as like, how do we measure that every day? We don't, but you can definitely be an observation of it. So according to the Health Enhancement Research Organization, or HERO, more than 90% of businesses leaders say that promoting wellness can affect employee productivity and performance. So this organization, a nonprofit organization, they did a study in 2014 with 500 business leaders. And this is what the business leaders were saying. They're saying, yes, we have seen that correlation. We have seen, where we improve the wellness of our employees by, offering incentives, for example, or giving more time to exercise during the day, or, ensuring that their workload isn't too much where they're getting burnt out. They do see better productivity. They do see a better performance. So let's talk about wellness and what that is. So for many people, it's different things and it can fall into different categories. So just an example, emotional is, you're looking at how you're feeling. Are you able to process your emotions properly? Given an example, let's say you had a loss in the family and you felt like you just immediately needed to come back to work and you just don't have time to grieve. So how do you think that might be impacting you? When you're trying to hold it together every day and you're not allowing yourself that time to process those emotions. Intellectual, how are you taking care of your mind? What are you doing to kind of ward off Alzheimer's and keep your thinking clear? Physical, your exercise, your body, all of that. Social, do you have healthy relationships? Are you interacting as best as you can, even if it is virtually? Spiritual, this is very important for a lot of people. Liz had mentioned earlier that I was a board member with a nonprofit organization. She said mediation. She really meant to say meditation. I took up a meditation practice. That's okay. I took up a meditation practice 3 years ago, and I've been doing it consistently for 3 years, and I can tell you it has made a difference. And then environmental. So environmental has to do with what is your environment like at any times that you expose yourself to? Is your environment organized? Is it cluttered? Do you have, healthy conversations in your environment? Is it happy and fulfilling? There's a lot of things that can go into the environment, your environment. So the Global Wellness Institute defines wellness as the active pursuit of activities, choices, and lifestyles that lead to a state of holistic health. So holistic health is more all-encompassing. A lot of times we look at health only in terms of Western practice, which is more so treating an illness, treating a disability, as opposed to getting to the root of the issue. Holistic health is looking more at, okay, what is causing the issue? How do we resolve the issue, and not just treating the symptom? So where do we begin? Self-care is not selfish. You cannot serve from an empty vessel, and I want you to always remember that. So again, many of us are givers, especially being in adult education and instruction. We're very passionate about helping others, and we help and we help and we help all day long. But are you taking care of yourself? So think about investing. What they always tell you with financial investing, you need to pay yourself first. You need to pay yourself 10%, 15%. Why? Because you're investing in you, you're investing in your future. It's the same way with your health. You need to be investing in you, and you need to be investing in your future. And that means making time for you and addressing things that need to be taken care of. So let's talk about what are these steps to getting there. So step one, make health your priority. You know when you haven't. I mean, no one needs to tell you. Your personal, experience and history with things, and when you haven't made time for yourself and you haven't done the best for yourself. So make a commitment to making health a priority. Step two, create a work-life balance plan. Step three, manage stress. So the thing with stress is you're never going to get rid of stress 100%. That would be lovely. That would be like, I just want it all to disappear, and it does. But stress is always going to be there in one form or another. So the thing is not to think that you can run away from it or shut down, but how do you manage it so that you can still be productive, you can still be happy? Step four, recognize when work may be affecting your health and reach out for assistance. Now, most people aren't good at reaching out for help. That's just human nature. Most people won't say, I'm really having this difficulty. Maybe we can do something about it. And this is especially true when there's people that take on a lot of work. And they do it for a number of reasons. Some people just really like to work and they're always creating new things with themselves. So they may be great starters, but terrible finishers because they're always bringing up, creating new things and just, passing the buck and having other people, finish a job. Or you might be someone who doesn't know how to say no. So let's say, for example, you're a coordinator out in the field and your director keeps telling you, well, we need to do this now, or we need to do that now, or we need to do this or that now. But the director's never checking in with you and saying, how are things going, right? So then it's the coordinator's responsibility to speak up and say, you know what, I kind of have all these things on my plate and I would love to take on something else. I don't want to say no, but can you please show me how I can fit that in so that I can be successful for this team? So that's what the conversation needs to be, as opposed to saying yes to everything and then just shutting down at some point because everything just kind of turns into an avalanche. Step 5, encourage wellness for the team, make it part of the culture. So, in our department, we try to have fun. That's very important. Before the COVID, we'd have potlucks all the time. We'd celebrate everything. Feels like we have a birthday every month or someone's, I don't know, something's happening for someone. So we're celebrating it. So having fun, also requesting things for the work environment that are possible. Like I know we started getting standing desks. We didn't have those for some time. And a lot of us wanted to work from home initially, so a little bit more flexible work schedule. And, how can we make wellness part of the culture overall? And having those conversations too, being open about having those conversations with other people. And then staying on track. I think that's the toughest part for most people. That's definitely the toughest part for me because, I like to get it started. And then, since I'm trying to do everything by myself, I don't have an accountability buddy. I tend to fall off track. So let's start with where can you start in where do you start? And that would be finding more about yourself. We talked about there's a lot of different areas in wellness, and you might already know what areas you want to work on, but you may need some assistance with more clarity and which ones would be best to focus on and how to focus on those things. So in this slide, I provided a couple of resources. Thank you, Liz, for providing these. She was really great. Each one is different. Some are short or longer than others. So for example, the Princeton You Matter is pretty straight to the point. It goes directly to the self-assessment. You can ask yourself a bunch of questions and kind of get some feedback for yourself. And then the J. Flowers Health Institute, that's a little bit more in-depth and comprehensive. So it's an actual website. They give you a lot of information on wellness and why it's important and a lot of different things. And then they also have an assessment, but it's just more of a whole package with that particular resource. And then you have the final resource here at the bottom. It's a personal wellness inventory. And what's interesting about this, I believe it comes out of the University of Indiana or Indiana University, and it's focused on the students. So the university students are also looking at wellness and health early on. So let's talk about creating the work-life balance plan. And a couple of tips there is focus on the areas you want to improve. So we talked about mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, social, or environmental. And then we also talked about setting goals, or we didn't talk about that so much, but set goals, but make sure that your goals are achievable. I know a lot of times we think, oh, I'm just going to set the biggest goal possible because I'm going to achieve that by next year. And you go like a month and that weren't that goal. So you want to make things that, goals that are manageable and that you're going to be able to achieve. Also, make time for your health and wellness. So you need to sit down on your calendar and look at where you're spending your time and fitting in the time for yourself. Maybe it's 30 minutes a day. Maybe it's that massage you get once a month, or maybe it's that virtual social time that you set up once a week with your support group that you've created. I've created one. A couple of us have created one together so that we could provide support to each other. So let's talk about stress. But stress affects every part of your body. It affects you physically, it affects you mentally, but most importantly, it affects your immune system. And why is that so important? because your immune system is your only natural defense against diseases. So I'll give you an example. If anybody in the audience has ever had chickenpox, if you've had it, you have the virus and it stays dormant in your system. And the only thing that's keeping that virus from coming back up again and causing shingles is the immune system. So if you get a weak enough immune system, that virus will come back and you will start seeing, you'll start seeing all of the things related to shingles. You'll get the sores, you'll get, sometimes it can damage your nerves endings, depending on what area on your face, on your body you get it. For example, if you get it on your face, you can get blindness. Shingles can be very serious. And if your immune system isn't suppressing that virus, it comes up. And that's why you see a lot of it in older people, because their immune systems aren't as strong. But because of our culture today and how things are going, we're under so much more stress with so much going on. And we're also not getting the nutrients we need. Many of us aren't getting the rest that we need to properly, bounce back from these things. And shingles is showing up in people younger and younger. So for example, I got it when I was around 32, it came up. And as a matter of fact, the doctors that saw me initially didn't know what it was, and they didn't diagnose it as shingles because they just assumed I was too young. They're like, "Oh, you can't have this, you're too young." Well, I had been a workaholic at that time. I wasn't sleeping enough. I was worried about things that really weren't that important. I was stressing myself out unnecessarily. And so the virus came up and I had shingles. So this is what I'm talking about. Like we need to take care of that immune system. We need to learn how to de-stress or manage stress. And I put the statistic again, stress accounts for 37% of all work-related illnesses and 45% of sick days, just as a reminder. The other thing,
Elena, just to let you know, we have a couple of folks like Janine and Sarah. They had shingles. Sarah had it when she was in her mid-20s.
Yeah, and that's why we have it, because the immune system isn't able to suppress the virus the way that it should be, because the immune system is getting compromised because of stress, because not sleeping properly, not getting the proper nutrition. So how long have we been dealing with this issue? Over 20 years or better. I found this, magazine article from Time on the internet, and June 6, 1983, I would have been 5, 7, 8 years old. I would have been 8 years old at this time, and we're still talking about the same issue. But stress is becoming more and more prevalent. You can see it even in our children, the amount of work that they're dealing with at school. Many of us aren't happy at very young ages, because we're not taking the time to take care of ourselves or learning how to do that. So what could be causing you stress? So if you can go to thementi.com really quickly again, we'd like to know what is causing you stress. So 3912236, if you could go to menti.com, put in that code and tell us what you think might be causing you stress.
They're clicking and they're logging in. There you go.
Okay, perfect. Lack of time. Okay. Financial strain. Yep. COVID-19, health issues, overwork, self-imposed. Yeah, sometimes it is self-imposed. The way we think about things or overthink things. Separation. Okay. Yeah. Relationship issues sometimes. Children, politics, overwhelmed. People, for us introverts. Separation, school, wearing a mask. So as you're seeing these things pop up, think about my boss. Think about, are these things, do they resonate with you? Are you feeling these things also? I see politics is a big one. Getting it all done. Yeah, especially when there's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. Remote environment. Okay, great. So I hate to run out of there, but you all have a copy of the PowerPoint, and I believe all the responses will be on there. So managing stress, I don't know if everything here was mentioned, but the first thing you want to do to manage stress is identify things that are causing you stress. So it could be personal relationships, work relationships, finances, workload, no one to talk to, no support system. It could be a health issue that you're already dealing with, responsibilities, not getting enough sleep, thinking, worrying. So it could be a lot of things, but the thing is for yourself to start thinking about, what are these things that are causing me stress, and what do I have some control over? So suggestions for stress management: sharing responsibilities, and this is very important at work, where the team is sitting down and talking about, okay, exactly what is everyone doing, and how can people pitch in that maybe aren't in as, doing as much as the other people, or maybe that people that are doing way too much start thinking about, do I really need to do everything? Right? Can I share some of these responsibilities? Also, getting more rest. Really interesting thing. I started learning more about rest, and I got a watch that helps me monitor my rest, so I can see how much deep sleep, REM, and also light sleep I'm getting. Because I learned that deep sleep is the most important in terms of your body being able to rehabilitate itself. Because in REM, even though it's when you're dreaming, your mind is still active. And what you want to do is make sure that your mind isn't always active, because that's what's causing you stress sometimes, is the thinking. So you want to get to the point where you're totally relaxed and your body has time to heal itself. So having that deep sleep is very important. Better time management, prioritization, nutrition. A lot of people don't think about this. I mean, most of the things that we eat any day today, any time today, is going to be processed. So making a conscious effort to get more nutrition. If you're not getting in your food, making sure that you're getting the supplements and the things that you need. Also getting enough sunshine. I don't know if people think about that a lot. I know I've been spending way more time in the house. So I started taking vitamin D, because if you're not getting enough sunshine, you can be more prone to depression. And we know what happens when you're depressed. You're not motivated, you're not feeling productive, and that's going to affect your performance. Also, planning and organization, communication, we talked about that, having someone to speak with, being able to have these open conversations, especially with your director or your manager, saying like, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, I don't want you to think that I'm a slacker, or, I'm not concerned about getting this work done, but this is what I'm dealing with, and I may need some help. Also, reduce stimulation. So, we do a lot at work, but think about when you go home and how you're still being stimulated. How much time are you at the computer? How much time are you still on the TV? How much time are you involved in negative conversations? So thinking about stimulation and how you can reduce that. So stress reduction is the first thing. So suggestions for stress management outlets. I'm going to go through these really quick: exercising, journal, finding a creative outlet that's less mental. Like, stop the thinking for a minute. Socializing, meditation, time in nature. These are some suggestions. You might have some other things that you already do or are interested in doing. So coping with COVID, there's a CDC article that's out. It looks specifically at dealing with stress, job stress in this pandemic time. So the article will recognize the symptoms of stress you may be experiencing, some tips on building resiliency, and then also knowing where to go for additional help or information. So tips for staying on track: know your why. Your why is the big reason. So for me, is I want to be around for my grandchildren. I want to be able to be strong and take care of people as long as I can, because I think at some point I'm going to be needing to be taken care of, when I'm in my 70s or 60s. But right now I'm still young and healthy. And it's unfortunate, because I see people my age that are 45 and they're struggling with a lot of health issues right now. But, that keeps me conscientious of, okay, what am I doing? Am I exercising? Am I eating right? I want to take care of myself. So that's my why. So knowing your why is very important. The other thing is know what motivates you. So what will keep you on track? For me, I like to celebrate. I like to reward myself, find out what you appreciate. Maybe it's buying a new outfit. Maybe it's getting a massage. Maybe it's getting a facial. But telling yourself, okay, unless I complete these things, then I'm not going to get that, right? Also, keep track of your progress. That also helps. Again, I got a watch that helps me keep track of all these things now. So I see my heart rate, I see how many steps I take, I see my sleep patterns, and that's actually helped a lot. Again, reward yourself, make goals realistic but not challenging, have an accountability buddy if there's one out there. Definitely don't get someone who is leaning more on you than you're leaning on them, because it's like the blind leading the blind, right? So if they're not going to do it, you're not going to do it. Don't make things too restrictive. One thing that our work did was we have a program called Get Fit Texas, and it's a little bit of a competition kind of between the different state agencies, but we get rewarded with 4 hours of flex time if we reach a certain amount of activity. So this is something I participated last year. I think everybody in our department did also. So this is very important for administrators and directors in talking about investing in people. So this is something the CFO asks the CEO, what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us? And the CEO says, what happens if we don't and they stay? So that's something really good to think about, because at the end of the day, whoever's on your team, we're all responsible for each other and getting the work done. And one person's productivity affects another. So thinking about that. So wellness options for employees. Again, this was mainly focused on the individual, but for the work environment, what you might want to start thinking about, if you're not already offering this, or if your organization isn't already offering this, these are a couple of things to kind of food for thought. On-site fitness centers or exercise program, personal growth and development opportunities, flexible work options and locations, health and wellness fairs and wellness resources, de-stress zones, and ergonomic workstations. So those are a couple of things that can be offered at the place of employment that would be beneficial to the employees. Okay, so I didn't have a question slide, but we have a couple of minutes, so I wanted to take the opportunity to see if anybody had any questions at this time or comments. Maybe some of this gave you food for thought, and it's kind of making you rethink how you've been doing things for yourself or maybe for your team.
So I'm looking through the slides, Elena, and I'm seeing lots of comments at the very beginning talking about how they appreciated the comparison of the work-life balance to other countries. Mm-hmm. And so there was comments about that. And then, of course, there were comments made about maybe how their workplace offers some ways to de-stress or to manage wellness. Mm-hmm. And, Tiffany Johnson said that she, the way she learned about this webinar was that she had shared the information with a couple of her college staff. So they're looking for better balance. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking to see if there are any questions at this time, but lots of kudos coming in, and, just like some sidebar comments about things that create stress for some. So some folks are talking about how their watch or their Fitbits stress them out because it reminds them that they have to work out, or they have to stand up. So that was cute. They were talking about that.
And it's kind of interesting because the things that wouldn't normally stress you out, once you're already to the point of being stressed, everything stresses you out. Like any little thing added just seems to kind of push you a little bit closer to the edge, right? Till you finally go over the edge. Mm-hmm. So we want to pull you back from the edge. We want to make sure, we're not getting to that point, because we don't want to lose people. We don't want to lose great people on the team. And we just want to help to support you to be better. And I think that's the attitude that we should have for anybody we work with, and looking out for each other. Because some people don't have anybody. Some people, we don't know at the end of the day that someone goes home to an empty house, or they've been home all day and they don't have anyone to socialize with. It's a very, very isolating and sometimes depressing state to be in. So.
Very true. Very true. We do have a question, mm-hmm. and this is from Modelia. She's asking, would you consider offering a second part to this training?
What would you like in the second part? I can definitely do that.
# no pressure.
No pressure. What's the second part? Because it's hard, because like in an hour you have to cover so much. You're like, let me cover everything. And we took out a lot, right, Liz? We had like a bunch of stuff, and we had to chop off a bunch of stuff.
Yes. So that would be something good to ponder about, right? What would the part 2 look like? But definitely, if you want Elena, we could always bring her back. Mary Frances says, make a second session with everything you cut out.
Oh,
That's all.
oh, okay. Yeah, it's more so on what companies have been doing with their staff, and kind of like research has turned more, not just so much in like systems and processes and how those have to be in place, but also how are the people, showing up in wellness, in terms of wellness for productivity.
Well, we have more suggestions. So Olga's saying, talk about meditation, the importance of it. Vladine says, second part, sample of a life balance plan grid, maybe. And Elizabeth says, the meditating process. So yeah, Kelly says a de-stressor. See, they're all tapping into your hobby here. So maybe that's something that you can consider. Lots of kudos, more kudos coming in. Thank you so much, Elena. Great information. Awesome job. Thank you very much. It was so helpful. Great job, Elena. You always bring great insight to the table. Very important topic. Wellness is key to everything, says Yolanda. Thank you so very much. This was great, says Teria. I'm sorry, I think I didn't say that correctly. Joshua says, great presentation. We all need more balance, especially at work. Thanks, Elena. And Lavana says, thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Elena. Great job. And I have a little bird is asking about your roller skating at work.
Oh, so let me tell you this story. So anybody that's visited our office knows it's downtown Austin. And some of the employees will walk around the building when they get a chance. But for me, I've always been pretty active my whole life. And I thought, well, it might be fun to roller skate because, there's plenty of there's a lot of parking areas, right? So I think I got away with it for about 2 days, and then it was deemed a kind of a safety violation. But the reason why I did it was, for me, activity needs to be fun and it needs to be challenging. For me, walking wasn't enough. I was sitting all day at the computer, and I needed the circulation. I needed my blood moving. And I thought, well, hey, skating, there's some, place to skate. I got skates, let's skate. Well, not a good idea, apparently. So, yeah, that's what happened.
Why wasn't it a good idea?
I was told it was a safety hazard for me to be skating in the parking lot.
You have Anne says, great job, roller girl. Everyone stay safe.
Yeah, there's a sign, no roller skating now.
So
yeah,
Elena, thank you so much for today. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. Wonderful presentation. There's still more accolades coming in. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, happy birthday to Mahalia.
Yes.
And thank you, Elena. Thank you, everyone. We're going to stay on for a couple more seconds before we close up.
Okay.
Lots of comments coming in.
So thank you. Have a good day, everybody.